My wife and I have been married for 26 years, and at first it was like a dream. Courtship, wedding, and the birth of our son in just a year. We are the same age, and for the first 7 years it seemed that we were completely in line with each other. Of course, there were the usual quarrels and everyday problems, but we always managed to cope with them. Then, at some point, I started noticing changes in her behavior. Sometimes her actions seemed disrespectful to me, especially when it came to things that made me jealous. It all started 21 years ago. Up to this point, I had always considered her calm, rational, and incredibly reliable, especially as a mother. But one day, during one of our more heated arguments, she suddenly blurted out that she was seeing someone else. That moment completely shook me. I can still remember it like it just happened. When she saw my reaction, she quickly backpedaled, claiming she was just lying to get under my skin, calling it female emotions, and asking me not to believe her. But the damage was done. Doubt had already taken root in my mind. After a few more arguments, I seriously began to contemplate divorce. On one hand, I loved her deeply, but on the other, the thought of possible infidelity weighed heavily on me. I hadn't caught her in the act, but her behavior made me question everything. What stopped me was our son. He was 6 at the time, blissfully unaware and always pulling me into family activities. I love my son dearly and couldn't bear the idea of tearing apart his world. A week later, once the tension had eased, my wife and I sat down for a calm conversation. She admitted that, yes, she had been interested in another man, but it never went beyond that. She realized that her family, her loving husband, and our son was what truly mattered to her. We decided to work things out and move forward together. However, a couple of weeks later, both of us started having issues with our sexual health. She immediately went to get checked, while I hesitated. When she got her results, she accused me, full of anger and threats, insisting that I'd been unfaithful and had brought this upon us. I was stunned because I had never strayed from her, not even once. I had always rejected any flirtations from other women. For a brief moment, I couldn't help but wonder if this health issue was the result of more than just her curiosity about another man. Perhaps there had been an actual betrayal. After a little back and forth, she calmed down once I reassured her of my fidelity. She then started theorizing that the chlamydia we were dealing with could have been contracted in some non-sexual way, like from a pool or a pond. By that point, I'd already decided I wasn't going to pursue a divorce. If I was staying, it was for the sake of our son. I chose to believe her explanation, despite my doubts, and leaned on medical literature that suggested it was possible to catch the disease through non-sexual means. Eventually, we both recovered, and after that, we seemed to find our way back to each other, living in harmony again. Another 14 years passed, and the nightmare that would define our marriage began around 7 years ago, creeping in slowly. My father had gotten her a job at a company where he was one of the founders. I knew some of the people there and had a friendly rapport with a few of them. That's when the jealousy on her part really kicked in. She started accusing me of having relationships with one colleague after another. I stayed loyal, explaining these rumors as nothing more than fabrications from others. We were always seen as this perfect couple, which might have stirred up some envy. But her baseless accusations started becoming more frequent, and alongside them came this weird pattern of disrespect. She stopped listening to my requests to come home early from corporate parties, which were happening more often. Sometimes she'd show up past midnight, feeding me lies. I noticed something was off. She'd come back looking like she'd just been in a sauna, even though she swore she was only at a cafe with her coworkers. When I finally confronted her, she admitted that yes, she had been at the sauna with them. And get this, they were all in office clothes, wrapped in sheets, no swimsuits. It made my blood boil. I knew the sauna trips were a thing, but they were always decent. Everyone in swimsuits. I'd even joined them a couple of times. But this wasn't an isolated incident. There were plenty of times she wasn't where she claimed to be. One simple example. I'd be waiting for her by the entrance for 40 minutes, only for her to stroll up from the bus stop, even though she told me on the phone she was stuck at work. Slowly, something inside me began to fade. My respect for her started slipping away. Eventually, I did the unthinkable. I responded to the attention of another woman, and after 24 years together, I lost my mind. I ended up in a whirlwind affair. It became so obvious that hiding it seemed pointless. I couldn't shake the guilt for a long time. I'd been faithful for 24 years, but now, well, it had happened. After a couple of months, I came clean. I told her calmly, in confidence, that I was having an affair. To my surprise, she didn't get angry. Instead, she confessed that she'd been struggling with guilt for a long time herself. 19 years ago, she'd had an affair with a man she worked with at her old job. She described it as just an attraction, but when I dug a little deeper, it became clear she wasn't going to apologize for it. She's too proud for that. My gut told me she didn't regret what she did. She regretted that I found out about it. And what is the most interesting thing? I knew this guy. We've shaken hands before, and once we even bought a bottle of whiskey together. I've been thinking about all this for a couple of weeks, just giving myself time to realize. But eventually it dawned on me. I've been living a lie all these years. The woman I thought was calm and devoted turned out to be completely different from the one I loved. My intuition has never failed me. What was even more annoying was that this guy was still in her phone contacts, tagged as a former colleague. They were still texting congratulatory messages. When they were having an affair, they didn't even have cell phones, so they met in person. She later brushed it off, saying she had saved his number just in case. Feeling disrespected and deceived, I spent another 6 months in a relationship with another woman, but then I broke it off at home. The arguments did not stop, and I became increasingly upset that, despite my loyalty and dedication to my family, I was faced with such a reality. I have always been gentle with her, both in everyday life and in bed. I drove her to work and picked her up from there. The memories are so vivid, as if it happened only yesterday. I suspect she may have had another affair in recent years, but I'll never know for sure. She's adamant that her past mistakes were just that, mistakes, and that she learned her lesson long ago. She claims to understand that family is more important than any fleeting connection, but I can't bring myself to believe her. Given her many lapses and acts of disrespect, my mind is a tumultuous mix of affection for the woman she once was and bitterness for everything that followed. I'm a passionate person, and I need physical intimacy at least once a day. My wife never really shared this need and never experienced true satisfaction, something I only realized after my affair with another woman. That relationship helped me shed my insecurities about my sexual abilities, showing me that I could offer more than I once thought. Financially, I have always strived to build my own business. 21 years ago, I founded my production company, relying on my mother's salary and the support of my parents. At that time, I didn't bring any money home. I invested everything in equipment with the help of my father. As soon as the business started working, financial problems became less pressing. It was about a year after her first betrayal. Over the years, the business has had its ups and downs. When her company went bankrupt and she quit, I took over the financial burden of our house. There was a period of stagnation when she was dealing with finances, and I founded another production company that still works today. We didn't have a lot of money, but we had enough for everything, including the construction and decoration of a new house. Intellectually, I knew I couldn't continue living this way. It took me a long time to finally file for divorce. When we separated, it felt like a weight had been lifted. A few weeks later, I submitted the paperwork. She was opposed. But 3 months later, the divorce was finalized. A month after that, I moved in with my mother. I didn't split the house. I left everything as it was. All I have now is a cottage, a car, and a rundown house. Yet, for some reason, I can't seem to completely erase her from my thoughts. My subconscious keeps nudging me to reach out and ask once more, Occasionally, I visit the old house for small tasks, but talking to her never leads to anything good. We sometimes manage to discuss neutral topics calmly, but as soon as our issues come up, it erupts into a fight. Even over the phone, when she's sending me off, she'll ask for a hug or to inhale my scent, but I can't bring myself to touch her. It's as if I'm caught between loving her and feeling like a stranger is right there with me. She'll also claim that her interest in me vanished 20 years ago and never returned. She says she stayed with me simply because it was convenient and necessary. For her, it's all about having someone around to care for her and handle daily problems. I don't live, I just exist. For the last year and a half, I have been actively looking for my soulmate, but nothing has worked. I'm like a zombie, looking for connections, but even in intimate conversations, I feel like I'm with a complete stranger. I know that I need to let go of the past. Going back to my old family life is impossible. The person has remained the same, but my memories and feelings are a constant burden. I loved her deeply. Every conversation with her leaves me hoping for answers and explanations. Why everything turned out the way it did. What else could be hidden? I need to figure it out. Did she have a secret life of her own? She saw how I felt about her, but our conversations boil down to mutual accusations and insults. I can't go back, and I can't erase my memories. The past and the sense of injustice keep me from moving forward. They haunt me around the clock, like a relentless torment.